Hey guys, I intended to do a live analysis yesterday, but upon reflection I've changed my mind. So I'll be putting the research I was building towards on the back burner and deal with some softer subject matter, as well as some new intertextualities for the time being. Hello and welcome to True Crime Rocket Science, the most authentic voice in true crime. Do you remember the last clue we discussed? Number 5 dealt with darkness. The idea that when the campground was under cover of night and it was moonless after midnight on the 6th, it was pitch dark. The only area visible would be the strip of illuminated dirt road a few meters in front of the moving vehicle. The woods, drop-offs and water, unless directly in front of the headlights, would be invisible. There are also no signs or other configurations, no landmarks to signal one area on a particular road that was different to another area. I thought those first 5 clues were sufficient to build our case for what happened in the Kiely Rodni incident. It looks like I was wrong. It looks like there's a 6th clue we've all missed as well. Before we get to that, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do like, share, leave a comment. At the end of this episode, I'll also be taking you through the next episode following in on this one, so stay tuned for that. And let's get started. So before we deal with number 6, I want to run through all 5 clues in consecutive order, briefly, and then ask, alternatively, how do these clues fit or apply to a foul play scenario? And then we'll test how well they fit into an accident scenario.
Worth playing for?
So the first 5 clues dealt with thus far in order are number 1, Kiely's phone. Number 2, camp rules possibly causing the party to end prematurely. Number 3, Kiely was isolated. Number 4, Kiely's identity based on her social media and music interests. Number 5, the significance of darkness. So how do these rules apply or fit into a foul play scenario? Well, as it turns out, quite well. Number 1, Kiely's phone apparently turning off at 12:33 and then back on to make her final call to Sammy is weird. Number 2, if the party ended prematurely and the camp rules had nothing to do with it, why did the party end prematurely? Number 3, Kiely was isolated. As a result of where she lived, homeschooling, and the pandemic, Kiely was isolated. Her mother confirmed this during the celebration service, saying they actually didn't have a choice of sending Kiely to school because of where they lived, because it was so isolated. And that's why Kiely had to be homeschooled. That meant the fabric of close friends looking out for her, for example, that Sammy had, the close friends, the network that Sammy had, as someone who attended Truckee High School, was a lot less for Kiely. Being isolated meant there was all the more reason to finish up with school sooner rather than later, but that's also why Kiely ended up being a lot younger than the other seniors at the party. Her youth would have been unusual and could have made her more vulnerable relative to the other seniors. Number 4, Kiely's social media and Jaggers showed that she was single. Had Kiely been in a relationship or had a close friend at the party, it's likely this would have afforded additional protection. And of course, she didn't. She didn't have close friends with her. Number 5, many crimes and criminal activities take place under the cover of darkness. Think about true crime cases where foul deeds awake at night. JonBenet Ramsey, the murder of Meredith Kercher, Chris Watts, the murder of Teresa Halbach, Oscar Pistorius. Of course, there are other cases that seem to play out in the daytime, such as Summer Wells, the murder of Gannon Stork, Patrick Frazee, and the disappearance of Kaylee Anthony. When do you think this case played out? At night or during the day? Now let's look at how these clues fit into an accident scenario, as well as do they fit in better or worse. Number 1, Kiely's phone going off when it did and the last ping being where it did fits into an accident scenario. Think about it. If you simply started your search from the location of the last ping And if you considered she might be in the water, the search wouldn't have taken 35 minutes. It would have taken less than 5 minutes, perhaps 35 seconds, if the diver had gone in and shone his flashlight directly ahead. How does the ping at the accident site at the water's end, just after midnight on the morning of August 6th, square with the tow truck guy's spiel? For that to work, Kiely and presumably her vehicle had to be near the accident site, then leave the campground completely for about half a day, then come all the way back to where the ping was. Does that make sense? Number 2. The great thing about the second clue was it showed how even we became disoriented and lost our way. And we were sober. We were looking at maps of the campground. Many assumed, as Gray Hughes did, that the party site was here. Except it was here. The correct party location changes everything, because suddenly the route Kiely took means at the very first T-junction, a left turn would take her to Truckee and home and to safety, but a right turn would take her towards the isthmus and a watery grave. I literally think in Kiely's case the difference between her going on to live happily ever after, and I'm sure she would have, was a right turn that turned out to be a wrong turn. And we speculated as much that the entire case could be explained by something as simple as just a wrong turn on August 18th on this channel, 4 days before Kiely was found, and also 4 days before Adventures with Purpose fueled the suspicious narrative. August 18th was the day the Uber couple were found, and precisely because that's what happened to the Uber couple, it seemed at least possible the same thing could have happened to Kiely. They got disoriented in the dark and crashed. The other thing about the correct location of the party means it gives you the correct location of the crash site. The fact that Adventures with Purpose started searching at the boat ramp, like law enforcement did, shows they assumed the party was at the campground, when it wasn't. To their credit, Adventures with Purpose found Kiely anyway, but they could have found her far quicker on August 22nd if they'd started from the road entries near the sanctuary. There are at least 2. Number 3 and 4. Kiely's isolation, Kiely's social media, and I also think the Virginity Rock sticker on Kiely's laptop all reinforce the notion of a teenager that would have all the more reason to get shit-faced than anyone else. The level of frustration, the need to socialize, and the need to release pent-up emotion was, I think, relatively higher for her. The fact that she was single also likely made her behave more recklessly than she would if she had a boyfriend looking after her, and also sort of holding her back and perhaps taking control of the situation. Number 5. Just as crimes often happen in the dark, accidents in general happen in the dark as well. On Mount Everest, accidents happen when climbers can't see in storms, or because of snow blindness, or from simply stepping out in the dark over a knife edge into nothingness. I bring this up because I've written a quadrilogy of books on Mount Everest. The Uber couple show that an accident can happen with darkness alone. You don't need rough roads, or a party, or a weird configuration of water, or suspects. You can lose your life simply by driving late at night, missing your turn, and going off the road. And that then brings us to clue number 6, the clue that we all missed: intoxication. So the 6th clue we all missed was intoxication. You almost never hear it mentioned, and when you do, intoxication is dismissed because Sammy's testimony is regarded as unreliable. Well, I differ on that score for 5 reasons. In other words, I believe Sammy's testimony, or Sammy's statement, or what Sammy said, for 5 reasons. Number 1, an independent witness described Kiely as shit-faced, but we're also told before the time that Kiely wanted to get drunk. Sammy says Kiely had intended to get drunk at the party. That was reported in the US Sun as well. I suppose you can argue that Sammy is only saying that to protect herself, and that it's a kind of victim blaming. But speaking for myself, I went to a birthday party about a month ago where I planned to drink too much, and I did. If I make a conscious decision to do that, is it someone else's fault? In a way, there are stresses that play into the dynamics, but one can't conflate that with foul play. One can't say it was my intention to do X, but then Y happened, and so now it's Z's fault. I think the word premeditated has been used here and there on various channels discussing the case. Has anyone thought that Kiely may have premeditated her own intoxication, but then taken it too far? I did about a month ago. Teenagers very often do. Did Kiely have a shot or two or three too many?
That last martini was too many.
Number 2, when Sammy spoke, she also said, I then realized later in the party that I believed she was drunk, or I knew she was drunk. Now, if you believe Sammy, and I do, then Sammy left the party earlier because, in a sense, she'd had enough. She left the party before Kiely did. Kiely remained behind. Why? Because she hadn't had enough, is one interpretation, that Kiely hadn't had enough partying. And that would make sense if she hadn't had enough and if her plan was to party hard and sort of party until late, until the last moment. Because she needed it more than everyone else. And she probably wasn't looking forward to the long, tricky drive home over those dirt roads all the way to the Lost Trail Lodge. That wasn't the same drive everybody else had to undertake. It would be a longer drive. It would take longer to get home as well. Number 3, even if you don't accept anything Sammy says, I think there are a few self-evident aspects to consider. What type of party was this? Was it an ordinary, arbitrary, just over the weekend hangout barbecue type party? No. It was one of those once in a lifetime, you've been waiting for it all year, counting down the months parties. It was a senior's graduation, and I don't think they chose the safe setting of the woods, which is also fairly private, for nothing. Number 4, just in general, the party was on a Friday night in midsummer during the summer break period in America. You typically have big parties on Friday nights in the middle of the summer holidays so that you can sleep late or not be hung over on a weekday or in church or whatever. So the date tells you what is likely going on. And Sammy saying it went Lord of the Flies and that there were illegal substances isn't surprising. In fact, it would be surprising if no one got drunk and if there wasn't any drama or hijinks. Number 5. The age of partygoers also gives you an idea what sort of party it would be and whether the partying level would be Danny Duncan or Homer Simpson. If Kiely's model for the ideal party was Danny Duncan, then the irony of this case is that YouTube, in a way, sold a 16-year-old on a party idea. YouTube sold a 16-year-old on a way of partying, and the last party of her life was a sort of YouTube come-to-life, coming-of-age party. It was also a party that cost her life. Whatever your theory about what happened. I've heard people complain that no photos or footage were shared of the party. Social media wants those photos so they can circle faces, red flag them, investigate them. If it was up to you to do that, if it was up to you to provide photos, your photos, and you were asked to send in selfies of yourself to feed the monster, only to have your photos taken and weaponized against you, would you be salivating at the thought? Would you be falling over yourself to do that? That's actually why law enforcement provided an anonymous site and constantly reassured the partygoers that if they were doing other illegal activities, that they'd overlook that. Do you think fake crime would do that? Do you think fake crime would overlook some of these illegal activities? Do you think the trauma pimps would give anyone the benefit of the doubt? Or would they give everyone the benefit of being blamed and accused? So why would anyone want to sign up for that? Kiely's mother described the witch hunt following her daughter's accident as a social media frenzy. And by the way, she's now becoming a target for derision and accusations as well. Kiely's mother described a monster coming out of the woods and the ether, basically depriving these kids in the truckie community who are on the cusp of jumping into their futures of a safe space. Jagger, Kiely's ex-boyfriend, who has taken the media into his confidence, has been mercilessly targeted, accused and harassed. In fact, possibly the majority or a substantial fraction of the hate crime community want Jagger to be the guy that the tow truck guy referenced. Sammy is another suspect purely because she stuck up her hand and reached out. Well, we haven't heard from her since, and I think everyone else looking on saw that, and saw that as a cautionary tale. Everyone else who was at the party, they saw this. A warning that when it comes to social media investigating a case that's quote-unquote investigating, or speculating, that's quote-unquote speculating about a case. Oh, we're just speculating. It's really a little more than an enormous snake that sucks you in and devours you. I'm sure Sammy feels guilty about what happened to Kiely, and I think that's to her credit. If something like this ever happens again, do you think the lesson is that Sammy should come forward and try to organize a search and engage again with the media? Would you? Or is the lesson walk away? Is the lesson a warning? If you look back and so much as glance at social media, you could turn into a pillar of salt. So the whole ruckus that there are no photos of the party and that this must mean either there wasn't a party or that we have 300 accessories to murder. Don't you think that's a little far-fetched? More accurately, I think no one came forward to say they saw Kiely leaving. Isn't that what it's all about? The people who didn't come forward didn't say they saw Kiely leaving, right? And we saw headlines about that, for example, from San Francisco Gate, SF Gate, no witnesses to Kiely Rodni leaving Tahoe party, right? Well, what if no one saw Kiely leaving because they all left before she did? Or what if it's that, and when Kiely left, she went the wrong way? How can you see someone leaving when you're going one way and they're gone another? So there could be an innocent reason why no one saw her leaving. Maybe she didn't leave. Maybe they all left before she left. If she was the last one or went the wrong way, I don't think anyone would have seen her. Also, if those who left last were the most shit-faced of all the partygoers, wouldn't their memories be the worst, the most clouded and confused? When you last went to a party, do you remember when specific people who you didn't know to begin with left at the very end? And CCTV didn't see her either. Is there a conspiracy among CCTV cameras in Truckee as well? Are the CCTV cameras covering something up? Have they developed AI and have decided to automatically erase footage of Kiely driving by? Or is there no CCTV footage? And if there's no CCTV footage, it doesn't mean CCTV is guilty. It simply means they don't know. It's not there. Same with the partygoers. So to summarize, I think the entire accident narrative becomes very plausible when you add the element of a young teenager not being a little drunk, but very drunk. Although this could explain something that plays into foul play, the problem with the foul play scenario is that the accident scenario doesn't need any additional information to play out, to especially where it plays out. It makes little sense if there was foul play and a cover-up that someone would choose a predictable and unreliable place to hide something. Given enough time, even AWP or Check It, if they hadn't found anything, the water would eventually recede to reveal everything. And you'd imagine anyone from California would have known that. If they were smart enough to get the vehicle to and in the water, then why weren't they smart enough to know the vehicle wouldn't hide her for long? Also, why hide her so close to the scene of the supposed crime? A great way to think about and I think understand this case isn't by looking at it directly, but indirectly. That's where intertextuality comes into it, and we'll be exploring that in our next episode. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.